Senator McPhedran, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I would, please, Your Honor.
Senator Wells, would you take a question?
I would, thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Wells, are you familiar with the commercial determinants of health and the way in which the hundreds of millions of dollars spent by alcohol and alcohol-adjacent companies influence people's choices? And are you familiar with the fact that the labeling required for food like peas and corn is more exacting, more demanding, focused on health, than the labeling or the lack of labeling on alcohol?
Senator Wells, Newfoundland, Labrador.
Thanks, Speaker. Senator McPhedran, I'm not aware of the details of those. I mean, I know that advertising has an effect, and that's why advertising on much of the media advertising on alcohol has restrictions. Of course, we see always companies sponsoring events, and that advertising is there, and that I'm sure they wouldn't be investing in that advertising if it didn't have some effect on their positive effect on their sales. So, but I'm not familiar with the other references you made.
Senator Mugley, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I would.
Yes.
Would Senator Wells take a question?
I will take a question.
Thank you, Senator Wells. I wanted to ask you about why you think it may not be practical to use a labeling process. And I ask that because, number one, I was on Associate Committee that heard from witnesses, and we tried extremely hard to get witnesses in the industry. They just didn't seem to be interested. I will give you an example of a distillery in Saskatchewan, LB Distillers, Saskatoon-based craft distillery. They made Canadian industry history by becoming the first distillery to voluntarily include Canada's low-risk drinking guidelines and standard drink counts on their product labels. I know the owners very well, and I asked them how it was they decided to put labels on their product, and they said, well, it was a no-brainer. Why would you not want to inform consumers, even though it's, you know, some people might think it impacts the industry. It certainly has not affected theirs. So I'm curious if you can explain a little bit more about why you think it's not practical.
Senator Wells, Newfoundland, Labrador.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Senator Mugley. So I'm not suggesting it's not practical for a distillery to make a choice, whether that's a health choice or a business choice or a community-minded choice. I'm not at all saying that. But if this labeling requirement was I mean, essentially, yes, it's Canadian, but we're reaching out to the world and saying anything coming into Canada needs this unique label. In fact, we just had a discussion in half hour ago when I was up speaking about Bill S4 about Canada jumping out of some of the more positive requirements in the North American appliance sector. And Canada saying, no, we're going to be separate from that. And I talked about the risks associated with that, and we heard that from witnesses at committee. We're talking about the same thing here, or an equivalent thing here, that, you know, Canada will be, I believe, unique in the world to not do this. An individual decision by an individual company, I recognize that's a good thing if they think that's a good thing. They're an individual business that chooses to do that. For those that know me, I think, you know, less government in society is generally better. I think freedom of the individual, freedom of businesses, not to run amok, but to do things that are responsible for their businesses, is in general better. And I think in this case, the business made a decision that they wish to do that, and I applaud them to be able to do that.
Senator McPhedran.
Yes, if I could ask another question of Senator Wells. Thank you very much. Senator Wells, do you know what a Group 1 carcinogen is? And secondly, do you know that alcohol has been designated as a Group 1 carcinogen since 1988 in Canada?
Senator Wells.
I know in general what a Group 1 carcinogen is, and I know that alcohol has been included in that category. I didn't realize the year, but I accept that.